Hey, I'm Andrea Runnels, also known as the Social Studies Whisperer. And yes, I am passionate about American history, and I'm a huge history nerd. I also was a teacher for 16 years. I left the public school classroom because I want to help support English language learners from the outside. And by helping teachers, I can help support those kids. I also left the classroom to be a champion for kids with ADHD. So a lot of the activities that I include in my social studies topics are things that are modified to meet the needs of my two special populations, because I feel that English language learners are one of the most, I just don't even have the words. They have so much potential. There's so much possibility if a teacher just takes the time to believe in a child and just show them that they have so much to offer, and that being an English language learner is not special education. If you are an English language learner, that means you probably know more than one language, and that means you are smarter than the rest of the kids. And so I will include a pep talk just for kids at the end of this, because some of the best work I did in the classroom was building up my kiddos who were not the typical norm, like my gifted learners, my English language learners, and my kids with ADHD. The whole entire reason why I took the gifted endorsement was to better meet the needs of my kids who were English language learners, because I felt that they were not being identified the way that they should. And so this course is going to give you the opportunity to modify your curriculum in a way that is easy and that will be best practices for all kids. And so I'm using the lens of social studies to help you, because what it is like a scrapbook of sorts, in like a digital guide to setting up your English language learners for success the way that I did in the classroom my last year. And so included are a lot of social studies ideas, because I was departmentalized and taught science and social studies. And as a social studies whisperer, super passionate about social studies. Okay, I believe in connecting the past to the present, and I believe in making content relevant. And to do that, you also need to include people of diversity. And so that's super, super, super important. Okay, so I hope that this gives you a lot of practical tips and a lot of inspiration so that you can set yourself up for success, for modifying your content for English language learners, and then therefore the kiddos are set up for success. Because if you take that time to build that relationship with those kiddos, then you will be amazed at the progress they will make. I had kids coming in not speaking English, and at the end of the year, I was mind blown. They were reading on like second or third grade reading level. I mean, mind blowing. It just takes one teacher to make a difference. And the fact that you're watching this right now means that you care. Okay? Thank you so much. A little background first. I want you to think about your comfort level with where you are with modifying curriculum. Maybe you have no experience at all, and that's okay. Maybe you do have some training, but you've just been too busy. That's probably more likely the case. So what this is going to do, like I said, there's a reason it's called a quick start guide, because it's going to help you with some easy strategies. I'm not asking you to fill out paperwork upon paperwork upon paperwork and do these really complicated things. Okay, first of all, I will be using the words English language learners and ESOL interchangeably, or ELLs, because those are the terms that are familiar to me. I realize in other states, your students who are English language learners are referred to by other program types. But I'm from Georgia, and those are the terms that I'm familiar with. Also, I will say newcomers, and by newcomers, I mean students who might be a level 1. Okay, let's think about levels first of all. In the book, I refer to WIDA levels, WIDA. And I have a link to WIDA.us to help you get a little background upon the different WIDA levels, because the way the levels go from like beginning student to like exiting the ESOL program. And so it's kind of important to be familiar with that before you get further upon your study. And it's in each subject level varies as well. So that website has a tremendous blog, and so that's a great place to start. And I've also included tons of helpful links at the end of this. Okay. And so thank you so much for watching, and think about where you are now, what level you're at, and then hopefully by the end you'll be ready to level up. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so my philosophy in social studies is connections. My philosophy in every content area is connections, connections, connections. And the best way that you can build vocabulary for your English language learners is to make connections to their own language. And the best way to do this is to look for those cognates or cognates. This depends on how you say it. I say cognates. The words that are the same in their language and in English. Spanish has quite a few of these. And many of them are math words. So that's a great way that you can help your kids succeed in math, because of course language arts is going to be the most complicated subject for them because of all the picky grammar rules. And so if you can help them recognize that, like, oh, meter in English is the same thing as it is in Spanish, then that they get really excited. And Greek and Latin roots, those are something that I use all of the time. Okay, think about the word united. In Spanish, uno is one. So united has that prefix, and I talk about how if you know Spanish, you already are very close to learning Italian, so you might as well go ahead and learn it when you're younger. And I reference Spanish a lot because, like I said, that's my wheelhouse. I am semi-fluent in Spanish. I was able to use it in the classroom, and it's also my frame of reference because most of my population of students that I worked with were Hispanic. So these are just examples I'm using. Of course, if you're dealing with some of the other languages, like Asian languages, you're not going to have cognates because they're not based on an alphabet. So if your child speaks French, Italian, or Spanish, then it's going to be a lot easier for them to learn English, even Portuguese, because they're all based on Latin, and the Romance languages are all similar. So some other common Greek and Latin roots that work well are like aqua, like agua for water, or sol, like on solo, so like sun and solamente, and then also, like I said, uni for united. And the fact that you're doing United States, that's a lesson in itself right there. So think about those Greek and Latin roots that are going to be similar in English to Spanish, and think about cognates, words that are the exact same. And I've included a link to a website that can help you find a list of them, okay? Because that's definitely going to be helpful for your students. And then they get excited when they see them. They're like, oh, we know that. And that builds that community if they feel comfortable and recognize words in their native language. Okay, let's talk about oral presentations. Now, people have mixed feelings about these, and I realize that speaking standards are included in the Common Core if your state adheres to that. However, you don't ever want to force a child to stand up in front of the class and speak if they're going to have a lot of anxiety. Okay, some of the ways that you can combat this during the year are giving them a lot of opportunities in like small groups to talk, and not just turn and talk, but with a focused thinking point and thinking question. And also, I did book talks, and that's something that could be done in any content area. Kids would have an index card, and they would just share like 1 or 2 sentences, and it was really quick. And instead of having them come stand up in front of the class, I would have them just stand at their desk, and that made them so much more comfortable. Okay, so my big project that I did with my 5th graders was Civil War project. And so I did the presentations a couple of different ways, and I wanted them to practice the speaking skills, and so there was a speaking component to this one. Typically, I had the kids just like come up in front of the class and present, but the last year I did something different because I did have a large population of English language learners because I'm ESOL certified, and so I had the kids do a gallery walk presentation instead, and just a few went at a time, and they all, like, they lined up outside of the classroom, the perimeter of the classroom, and they all stood beside each other. And so if they were standing beside their buddies, they often felt more comfortable. And so then they would share what they did for their project, and I didn't really give them a rubric for it. I kind of just was like, just tell about it, and if I had more questions, then I would come around to them after. And so after we went around and I just did this in like groups at a time, like 6 or 7 kids at a time, and then the other kids could ask questions, or they could go around and ask questions after. in a more casual atmosphere, and it got the kids talking, but it was less like they were in the spotlight, because I know, especially the older the kids get, if they're newcomers to America, or even if they aren't and they still have an accent, they get very nervous to talk in front of their classmates because they don't want to be made fun of. And so this made them feel comfortable, and I think the kids really like doing this presentation that way. So think about doing different types of oral presentations and give your kids the opportunities to speak. And by the time I did that, it was almost the end of October, and so we had been in school for several months. I wouldn't start out in August doing group presentations like that or oral presentations, because you want to build time for the kids to feel comfortable with one another. When you're having students respond to questions, it's very important that you allow wait time for English language learners, because it's a little harder for them to gather their thoughts in English, because they're having to filter through their native language first. So please allow wait time for them. And also, if you're going to call on a very, not low level, but like level 1, level 2 English language learner, then you probably want to give them a heads up ahead of time, and maybe even tell them what the question is going to be so they have time to prepare. And a lot of times kids that have accents, they get a little nervous that people are going to make fun of them, so you might want to help set them up for success ahead of time, or put them with a partner and let the partner help them figure it out. Okay, so that's just definitely something to think about, is allowing wait time. And the other kids are going to be whiny and want to answer the question, and you have to let those kids feel included. And so that's the good time. Just tell those kids, this person is just learning English, and let's give them a chance. I did so many pep talks and sermons about, tolerance and that sort of thing when I was in the classroom. It's a great opportunity for a teachable moment, and how we're all learning together and we're all helping this child learn the new language, and then at the same time gives the child an opportunity to kind of teach some of their own language to the other kids too, and that makes it even more special, because they are getting to know each other, and your other kids are learning a new language too. I had some kids who were native English speakers who were grabbing the Spanish dictionaries because they wanted to learn Spanish. So I thought that was a really great benefit of having multilingual kids in a classroom together, right? Okay, let's talk about the no-brainer. Take it from the girl who had needs to control talking pretty much written in Sharpie on all of her report cards. You're going to want to give kids the opportunity to talk, okay? Every single new teacher manual 101 features like some kind of turn and talk type of strategy. Well, turn and talk is a little bit old school, because turn and talk often ends up with turn and talk about like what you were Snapchatting about last night, or what you're going to do at recess. So we want to give kids purpose for talking. Okay, so one of the best ways to support your English language learners is to build those language skills across the curriculum. Last year, I just taught science and social studies, as I stated, but I made sure I incorporated tons and tons of word work into instruction, because the more chance they have for speaking, the better language acquisition they will have. And also, the more repetition you can give with their main words, like the academic target words or the content area vocabulary words, then the better their chance is of acquiring English. So I definitely like to use whole brain teaching, and I have included links to that because it explains there in full detail. Now, however, don't think that you have to incorporate whole brain teaching in its entirety. I definitely decided to pick and choose the things that I thought were appropriate for my classroom. And when you're learning about a whole new classroom management system, which is essentially what it is, it can be overwhelming. So just pick a few things to try. One of the things I tried was teach. Okay, so something that's really good for English language learners, of course, is repetition, and also chunking instruction. You don't ever want to give like a 30-minute lecture and then at the end oh, who has questions? Because your kids are going to be so far gone, and you know this already. So with teach, every couple minutes you stop and then you have the kids explain what you just said to a partner. And so what you can do for this is you can number the kids off like ones and twos, like sitting across from each other or beside each other, and then you have them share what you just talked about. And oftentimes the kids will restate it in a way that makes more sense to other kids. So that's a great idea. Now, if you have a child who's just coming into America and is not very fluent in English, then you put them in a group of 3 and you just have them listen. And what you do is you say like 1, teach, and then you have the kids who've called number 1 explain it back to the other kid. And then there are lots of variations. And then you can switch and say 2s, teach, and have the 2s restate it. And I wouldn't do this like every minute because then you're going to lose the focus, but after you hit those key points, it's definitely a good idea. Okay, this is broken down into different sections based on like my top 10 hacks. Teacher hacks are a great thing, like my little tips and tricks that I use to modify curriculum that the kids didn't even know. And I share some that relate to social studies as well. So you might accidentally end up liking social studies when this is over. So some of the topics I'm going to cover are setting up your classroom space and organizing your classroom library, primarily like for social studies or just to have more engagement from your English language learners. Also, I'm going to cover with setting up your classroom more like how I use a timeline on the wall as a preview because it's important to preview things. I'm also going to cover posting language objectives in addition to whatever required curriculum standards that you are supposed to have. I'm also going to cover like some ways that I used whole brain teaching and did like hands-on vocabulary, and ways that I did used teach and had the kids had student-directed learning, and also gave the students opportunities to build speaking and listening skills, because all teachers are ESOL teachers. If your students are pulled out for services, then that's generally not too much of the day. And so it's very important to include those kids all through the day. That way you can increase their language acquisition even more, okay? Some other things that are going to be covered are going to be like anytime activities that English language learners can do, and like how to make a newcomer kit. Because I don't know how many times I was sitting there, like maybe it was during my planning time, or walking out the door, or in the middle of a reader's theater presentation. Yes. Or right before standardized testing. True story, it happened. And I got, Mrs. Reynolds, please send someone to get your new student. Like out of nowhere. That's how it was done at my school. Like you didn't know. You didn't get a heads up you were getting a new student. You were very lucky if you found out the day before. And so it's a good idea to have some stuff on hand in case you get a new student who does not speak English, because chances are the child might not even speak a language that you speak. I was lucky to know Spanish, but there were times when I got some students that spoke languages that I don't know. And so it's important to have a way to communicate and some ways to have the basic needs met, and kids to ask for help if they need it from a newcomer kit, okay? I'm also going to cover integrating the arts because I think that's really, really important. And I'm also going to cover my picture dictionaries that I created to be a more supportive type of study guide for English language learners, okay? So I hope that this was helpful, and I hope that you learn a lot. And let's get started with setting up our classroom space with English language learners in mind.